Welcome to campaign prep for the show Imperium Maledictum. We're going to cover seasons 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3 of the show. Basically, the entire rest of the show. It will be spoilers. If you remain here, you will be spoiled. I've done my best to write as little down and think about this as little as possible so that you can experience my thought process. You will regret being here. You will regret the madness. But assumably, if you are a Warhammer 40K fan, let's call it, you're used to being infected by chaos. So here we go. We're going to divide up the campaign into a couple parts. We're going to call this 1.5. This is the Darkholds. Then we have season 2, which is Titan's Lair. You know what? We're just going to fill it in with text later. Then we'll do 2.5, 2.5, and 3. So let's just go ahead and label those. Now, Titan's Lair is named after the planet it's on, in the same way that we named season 1 after Iron Archipelago. 2.5, I'm not the most certain on this. I think we might just call it the Chaos Gods, for reasons I'll elucidate later. And this is going to be the Warp Puzzle. This is not its final name. It's going to have to be something with clocks that will come back to relate to Erasmus Harlock. So let's cover what each of these individual seasons are going to be about. The Darkholds. You're not going to let me... There we go. Okay, so Darkholds is going to be about 4 episodes, let's say. About 4 episodes. It will cover our current cast as they transit on the Light of Dawn, named after the living saint Dawn Latenya. This is a ship that's less than 2,000 years old. It is a transport ship that is currently transporting troops. It is the troops that have been picked up from the Wrathful Righteous. They are training on board, and they are covering themselves in the faith. The ship itself is a shrine to the living saint Dawn Latenya, so Imperial cultists and Fraterus militia fit in quite well with the locals. I think our parties fit in less so. So the 4-episode plan is going to be a recap that will catch everyone up on everything that has happened since season 1. So some things that are going to happen in the initial time are going to be covering things like the Imperial Navy ships showing up as scheduled to drop off ammunition and supplies and pick up the Wrathful Righteous. Instead of picking up the Wrathful Righteous, they're going to pick up the about 1 million locals that need to get transport off of the rock to safely travel through the warp. It's going to cover kind of a CIF, that's the Civilian Inventory Facility or whatever it's called. We're going to talk about how our Elysium boy is being bounced from the Imperial, I want to say army, but it's the Imperial Guard, and is being moved over to the Rogue Trader Service, but technically he needs to turn in all his old equipment. I'm probably going to do something like where the Rogue Trader bought all of his equipment except for his Imperial Infantryman's primer, and he's got to turn it in. And then we already know he lost his Imperial Infantryman's primer because that was part of his prequel episode. And so there's going to be this dire threat of a commissar coming over and killing him because that's actually the punishment for losing it. And then the commissar is going to get over and recognize that this is a man who assisted in the killing of a noise marine and thank him for his service, or some other cringy get out of the military shit. But basically he's not going to get shot in the head, but I'm going to ramp up, make it seem like he's going to get shot in the head, just for some pointless drama and to remind everyone the cruelty of the Warhammer universe. My plan for James, I don't really know. I don't know how I'm gonna get James run into this quite yet. Maybe that'll be part of the prep here today. I have reached out to talk to James to specifically ask him to not get involved out of character with how I'm going to describe Omar's next part. So for Omar, he wants to go on a spiritual quest in order to cleanse himself of that corruption points that he has. And he is going to go on a quest, but it's not going to be the kind of quest he thinks it is. We're going to do some Aes Sedai, we're going to do some Jedi shit where I have a character lead him to a shrine room and then say something that can be easily misinterpreted, like, you'll find someone here that you need to speak to, and the only thing that goes into this room is what you bring with you. And so he's going to go into basically like an empty shrine, like a special consecrated shrine. But the person that appears to talk to him will not be a imperial priest. It will be a daemon sent by Tzeentch to corrupt him. And the daemon is going to try to get him to do things. I think specifically the daemon is going to try to get him to do two specific things. One, it is going to lead him down a path of reasoning to get him to rebuke the anathema. Now, you might think that sounds like a good thing if you didn't know that the anathema is the name that the Chaos Gods have for the Emperor of Mankind. So James knows that, and I don't know if Kain knows that, but I don't think Omar knows that. And even if he does, his character almost certainly does not in-game. So this priest is going to try to lead him into saying the words or the sentiment of I rebuke or I reject the anathema. The second, and if he does that, not only will he not lose corruption, he'll gain corruption in the process. And then I'll act really smug about it. The second thing is that he's going to try to interfere with the mission in the Darkholds. He's going to tell Omar's character to like kill, but to spare a specific group. I don't know which group yet, but to like convince the rest of the group and anyone nearby that like that group should be saved. And then it'll be his job to logically or persuasively, emotionally convince the rest of the group of this. In the process of doing that, oh my God, Norton, get out of here. In the process of doing that, he will once again earn himself another corruption point. If he resists doing both of these things, he will lose a point of corruption instead. Because that's what a faithful servant of the Emperor will do. Now, Darkholds 1.5. We're going to kind of talk briefly about this. Mercutio Borghese, the Brazen Consul Space Marine, will be there to watch over them, but will not interfere in what they're doing. I'm going to lay out like a probably like 6 to 8 room dungeon with at least 3 different groups that are involved. And we'll probably have like some central meeting area that's like a combination bazaar / neutral ground / someone turns it into a battleground every once in a while. And by once in a while, I mean like once a week there'll be a shootout there before everyone starts rebuilding all their stalls and doing trading and stuff like that. And getting involved with these 3 groups will be, you know, the players arriving and then choosing which rooms and which groups to get involved with and whether they want to make alliances with the group. The correct answer is to kill everyone. And all 3 groups are going to attempt to prove why they shouldn't be killed. I think at least one group is going to be where Gropsis came from. So it's going to be mutants. It's going to be like people who are like slightly animalistic, just like Gropsis was like a rat person. They're going to be different types of animals, and they're going to have different mutation traits. There's a bunch of different Warhammer 40K rollable charts for mutants, so I'll just get like 4 or 5 NPCs that are going to be significant players and roll them up some weird mutations just so it seems authentic. And then the rest of them are going to just be weird mutant guys that don't really talk that much. But we're going to heavily imply that Gropsis came from this group. There's going to be another group that's probably like former crew members who are more like deserters, right? People who ran from the extremely orthodox and rigid life aboard the Light of Dawn and have made their way down into the Darkholds and are basically pretending to be like passengers or like horrifying creatures, but they're really just kind of normal people and the descendants of normal people who are living down there, but they are all guilty of mutiny or abandoning their duty. But they're going to do their best to hide that fact as much as possible. The third group, I'm not really sure yet, but we're going to have them probably be like very aggressive compared to the other two groups, just to kind of kick things off. But maybe they'll be aggressive in like a, we're all right and the other two groups are bad, so you should work with us. But I want to make it clear that there's a sort of time crunch going on where the players know that they only have so much time. They only have 4 episodes, and they only have so much time in game to solve this problem. So they either need to make alliances or they need to aggressively start killing. Either way, making alliances plays into their strengths very well, but also them aggressively crusading plays into the faithfulness they show. So I feel like either of those approaches allows the group a lot of latitude. It's kind of predictive of their behavior without necessarily forcing them to go down either path. Gives them some latitude. The real problem could be if Omar stalls the group while thinking about things. And I don't just want to solely lay that on Omar, because Kain recently played a character that absolutely stalled a horror game. And it's not necessarily bad, right? It's okay to RP and mess around and have some fun. But this is a very short run series. There's not a lot of room for error here. I don't think either of them are going to mess around in this way, but it is a possibility. Always a possibility. So I'm going to have to do what I can to guide them away from that possibility. And I think James is probably going to aggressively prosecute a war of eradication, for sure. He's been pretty militant for someone who can't fight as a character. Titan's Lair, Season 2. So I anticipate this will be about 20 episodes. I need some hourglass imagery that drops on every break. Maybe. We'll think about that. Okay, so Titan's Lair, Season 2, 20 episodes. The basic premise is that the rogue trader, his fleet, and the Navy fleet are all transiting together. They arrive over top of Titan's Lair, which is an Adeptus Mechanicus Forge world / Titan. I don't think it's technically called like a Titan's world, but all of the Titan dens are all Adeptus Mechanicus Forge worlds. So they will be arriving at the beginning of a military exercise, like a training simulation. I'm going to have to look on the PDF map of whatever our sector's called. Not the Ultimus Segmentum, but whatever the specific subsector or whatever we're in. I need to find a night world. And we're going to say that there are 3 night houses bringing 60 Imperial Knights under the banner of the High King. Although, because they're going to be Imperial... I see, this is a problem. I don't know all of the terminology that well. I think they're called Adeptus Questers or Mechanicus Questers. They're going to be Knights of the Mechanicus. So these 2 worlds are pretty tightly bound to each other. And let's say it's been planning in decades. Maybe some of the people involved in this war game weren't even born when the planning for it started. that gives a sort of gulf of time scape of like, look how long it's taken to get this arranged and done. That makes it seem like the Imperium is like bureaucratically inept. We kind of focus in on that. We focus in on the organizational skills of the Adeptus Mechanicus, but then we also look at how incredibly scarily effective they are on the ground. Now, there are going to be two main storylines during Titan's Lair. The upper meta level story is the rogue trader now has to park his chained together asteroids in orbit somewhere in this system, somewhere over the world probably, or around a moon or something. And so he needs permission to do that from the local Adeptus Mechanicus and like whoever they have as the planetary governor. And his desire during that time is, one, he has a Pharaoh's device that he's trying to sell to his Inquisitor buddy. And now his Inquisitor needs to get it somewhere. But this fleet is such a mess that like nobody's in a big hurry to leave to go anywhere. Everybody needs to refit, rearm, refuel. And the Adeptus Mechanicus are hosting this giant war game with tons of supplies. So this is a good trading opportunity. So at the highest level, not only is it about the rogue trader looking to find a new home and negotiate between himself and the local Magos governor to get things done, but it's also about the rogue trader getting involved in buying and selling things from the Imperial Navy, from the fleets that came from the Imperial Knights, the local Adeptus Mechanicus, all of the people that live on his asteroid, the rogue trader's asteroids, and even the people that are not Imperial citizens that are now trapped within the proper borders of the Imperium. All of these people have things that they want to buy and sell. They all need transit from places, and the rogue trader is the person that is in the best position to do it. So for him, his story is moving things around, and that is where we insert the players. So the player's job is probably initially going to be researching the various factions. That'll probably take a few episodes, and we'll give them all goods and things that they have, and then we'll review what the players have, not just the assets that I gave them from the time of Dinas Katari at the very beginning of the show, but like more assets that the rogue trader has given them to negotiate with. Maybe we might even name prices this time around. I'm super hesitant to do that because, you know, like when you start talking about things that cost millions and millions of Imperial Solars, right, or Imperial Throne Gelts or whatever, it just gets ridiculous because obviously a real economist didn't play in the economy of Warhammer 40K, so it really falls apart once you get outside the tabletop RPG's like $10,000 range. But we'll try to get James involved. Probably I'll make a spreadsheet of like different groups and what they want and what they have, and maybe part of it will be determining what people say they want and what they actually want. And it's James, so maybe we'll include opportunities for him to like force things on people, like convince people that this is a good that they need. I'm thinking the weather satellites, honestly. I think there's a good opportunity here to unload the weather satellites by implying that the Imperial Knights have brought some of their herd of lizard beasts with them because they need, like, the lizard beasts need to be upkept, and the Imperial Knights need to like eat their finest steaks and such. And maybe there'll be like an offhand mention somewhere from one of the Imperial Knight nobles, like a baron or a lord or something that's like, yes, well, we're always having trouble back home on whatever our planet is, where, you know, the lizard beasts, they suffer so under the torrential downpours. You know, they might be reptiles, but it's been so long since they've lived in a jungle environment. My lands are just not well taken care of in this way. I envy the lands of nearby lords, which are, you know, better terrain. if only I could get some help in this way. Or maybe imply, rather than say it's like a low-ranking person who needs it, we'll say it's one of the... it'll be a low-ranking person who drops the hint, but say something like, I wish I could serve my lord to make all of our lands better in this way. Oh, and then, you know, like, but imply it's because they don't have an STC or some high-level technology that a Night World would know about. And then we'll see if the players pick up on it enough to play the Uno reverse card of going to the Count or the Baron or whatever and be like, hey, we have these weather control satellites. And they'll be like, oh, weather control, how interesting. What can I give you for that? My kingdom for a horse. So that'll be like the first set of episodes will be them learning the major players of all the various factions that get involved. They will also have to deal with their new boss. So Mercutio Borghese will kind of be leaving during season 2 and rejoining the bridge crew. The bridge crew are going to be way more important in season 3. During season 2, their new administrator, their new supervisor, their new liturgical is going to be Jeff with the silent Y. So what's going to happen is that Jeff has been like reprogrammed through indoctrination by the Inquisition. They've taken all of his information about old stuff from the Great Crusade times and like pre-Great Crusade times, and they've drained it out of his brain and learned some important information, and now they've reprogrammed him to be a good imperial citizen who believes in God, rather than say shit like damn theists. And so he has the skills to lead a small team, right? We know that he's a sergeant of a specialist naval marines group, a tertio primus of the Imperial Army, or whatever it was called back then, the Solar Auxilia. So he's going to have like a time where he's just kind of weird to the group and doesn't really respond to questions they ask him about his past. And they'll either investigate that and work through it, or they'll just go fuck it, and we'll see what they say about it. But getting used to him and his sort of more rigid understanding of the world compared to Liturgical's more laissez-faire leadership style. Based on that, we'll have the group evolve to another storyline. And that is going to be the storyline that kind of simmers underneath for the next set of episodes until it's ready to go. One of the lords... We'll talk about all 3 of these Night Lords, right? So these... The High King, who I think if you're a Adeptus Mechanicus Knight, is called a Princeps, which is also the name of a person who runs a Titan. So the Princeps has brought 2 high-ranking Knight houses with him, and maybe he brings like 30 guys and they each bring 15. So I think Imperial Knights are based off of groups of 3, so that means 5 lances for the smaller houses and then 10 lances for the main house. And we're going to set up a situation where sometime during the exercises, the Princeps of the Night Lord's house dies. Actually, he's assassinated and killed. And if the players investigate, they'll find that out. But it initially seems to anyone who even remotely cares that, in fact, in actuality, he died during the military exercise, right? But in reality, he is killed on purpose, intentionally, assassination, one that's been in the works for years. So we're going to talk about the tech casts of the Adeptus Mechanicus Knights. They're called sacristans. They're basically craftsmen and artificers who maintain the Titans. So they are essentially like sub-tech priests. They get sent to Forge Worlds. They're basically indoctrinated and sent back as a very subtle way to maintain power. and to insert tech priests into a group's midst without them outrightly being like, there's a tech priest with us. They go, it's one of our sacristans. That's somehow a lot better. So anyway, one of these houses, we're going to call it house number 3, the weakest house. Their sacristans have been replaced for some time with members of the Dark Mechanicus. That's the Chaos version of the Adeptus Mechanicus. And so these sacristans have been slowly altering the throne Mechanicus that the knights sit in to control their Imperial Knight war machines. And so the head of the house of House 3 has been slowly driven to chaos. Like, when they initially sat down in the seat, they were not a bad person in any way, at least as far as the morality of the Imperium is concerned. But the fact is that the artificial intelligence that drives the machine has been turned to chaos. And when the two personalities merge, the chaos one begins to subsume the Night Lords. And so this Night Lord of House 3 has slowly fallen to chaos as a result. And so the whole house is basically headed towards chaos. And this long-range plan for House 3 to seize power, to seize the whole world, and then at some future date, flip it towards chaos would be a massive boon for the forces of chaos. So the Dark Mechanicus, the Magoses that have put this into play, are subtle, insidious forces rather than brutal, immediate action forces. This third house has a plot, and they are successful at killing the leader of House 1, aka the Princeps. And the rest of the Titan's Lair arc is either finding this Among Us assassin that has done it, and then like help, not necessarily like the party fights a Titan or the party fights an Imperial Knight, but like helping the investigation, or at the very least getting out of the way, moving a lot of parts in the background, and all the while they still have their job to do, which is information gathering and trading on behalf of the rogue trader. House 2, I think, will also be sinister. We're gonna use them as a semi-red herring. I think that their deal is going to be that they don't know that they are being guided by the hands of fate of like Eldari Exodites. So I plan for like a group of Eldari to show up in the backgrounds of season 2, 2.5, and 3. Exodites are basically like Pennsylvania Dutch or like Amish or Luddite Eldari that before the Slanesh thing happened, they were like, technology is bad and like our culture is going the wrong direction. We need to just get back to working our hands in the land and take the roots down. And so they founded these worlds called Maiden Worlds, and they basically float around in secret trying to avoid contact with anyone. They are a group of Eldari that live on planets, which is pretty weird for Eldari. So these Eldari, using their natural powers of psycherism, have seen the fates and are slowly weaving a new fate where if they can alter the way House 2 goes, if House 2 seizes power over House 1 and 3 in this struggle for the Imperial Night World, then House 2 will become a good trading partner and future ally of these secret Eldari Exodites. So I don't know that any member of House 2 actually knows that Eldari Exodites are helping guide their fate, like indirectly through weaving plots, but also somewhat directly by resource drops. I think that as part of their information gathering and like investigating, the party will learn that there are occasionally like weird ties to Eldari. Like just some of their equipment seems sort of Xeno-y and Eldari-y, and people are just like, oh, that's just how it is in our house, right? Like these people don't know that they're slowly being converted and infiltrated by Eldari. Night worlds are kind of feudal and backwoods people, and honestly, that kind of fits with the Exodite lifestyle anyway. So these are all just the visitors to this Titan's world. Then we have the powerful Titans themselves. We're probably not going to make all 20 Titan pilots in the same way we're not going to talk about all 60 Imperial Knights, but we're going to make up some of these Titan pilots, the Princeps and some of their Moderati, which are like the deck crew of like 1 to 3 guys who assist them in running the ship. The ship, of course, is a giant Imperial Titan. So it's going to be a lot of warlords, maybe some reavers, maybe like 1 Emperor Titan. I think that's a Titan type. And then I think they're called Warhounds, are like the smallest ones. And the exercise that's taking place here is basically like each Titan is being matched up with 3 Imperial Knights, and they're gonna go run around and basically split into 2 teams and like have a low-powered like theoretical war game and shoot at each other and test out like mock fighting, dozens of gun servitors, like as few casualties as possible sort of deal. And just make sure the whole Titan Legion and the Night houses, the Night Planet forces, are all like operating at peak efficiency and that they can both work together, because through psychological conditioning from the sacristans, the Knights believe that they owe allegiance to the Titans. So these 2 groups are going to have a strange relationship, one of subservience. We need to get that across during the Titan's Lair arc. And yeah, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to execute all that, but let's say the last 3 quarters of the show, the last 3 quarters, so most of it, are going to be about uncovering the ongoing plot of House 3, the bad house, to like kill the leader, the Princeps of their planet, and then slowly like disable House 2, throw House 1 into chaos, and then throw their own hat in the ring so that they will petition the Adeptus Mechanicus of the Titans world, Titans Lair, that they are the most competent and that they are, they should get the Adeptus Mechanicus backing for when the vote for leadership goes down. We'll say it's like an elector count thing. That's pretty Warhammer Fantasy, so people will believe that if I say that there's an elector count. And then like 1 representative from each of the great houses, or maybe like 1 representative for each knight will vote. Or maybe each knight will vote. And so there'll be this thing where like people who openly speak out against House 3 are like found dead. And that's how the party maybe starts cluing into the fact that House 3 might be trying to seize power by eliminating, like they already started it pretty good. So let's assume there's like 15 of them. They eliminate 1 of the House 2 guys, and now it's 14 versus 15. And then they, once House 1 is in chaos, they just got to start picking off Princeps and Imperial Night Lords left and right, or just convincing them, converting them, whether they literally convert them to chaos via Dark Mechanicum, or whether it's just like, our claim is so strong, a new leadership is required. I have a vision, a strong vision of our future. We'll figure out the specifics when I do season 2 specific prep. That's going to cover most of season 2, I should think, is leading to a climactic final battle on Titan's Lair that will be sort of set piece battle of chasing down that original Dark Mechanicus guy that attacked them during season 1 with the dogs and the weird rune stuff. It's going to come to a head probably something really fucking cool, like running along the arm of a Titan in the middle of a battle. Like the Night House, the losing Night House, the losing Dark Mechanicus Night House, like breaks out and starts an attack on like everybody else while no one's in their Titans and no one's in their Knights, and they're just like knocking machines over, ripping the thrones out, sort of deal. And while that's happening, like whatever Titan Lord, whatever Titan Princeps the party is currently negotiating with, like hops in their machine, and they're like inside the citadel on like gun turrets or on a firing line, and the Dark Mechanicus will come at them while they're on the outside of a Titan. So there'll just be this sick battle that's like on a Titan's arm, and then like huge explosions and lasers will go past them throughout the whole battle, and it'll be clear that they're in massive danger the whole time. There's a whole second battle they can do literally nothing about. So that'll lead into Season 2.5 and Season 3. Season 2.5, the Chaos Gods working title, is going to be about the players either choosing to gain the favor of the 4 Chaos Gods through a 4-part episode where they're given an opportunity to speak to a representative of each of the Chaos Gods, and then choose whether to receive their protection for a attack on the warp. And so Season 3, Warp Puzzle working title, not actually going to be the name of it, is going to be about finding all of the parts needed to launch an attack to reclaim their lost rogue trader, Pierre Cowles. The end of the season will be the battle in Erasmus Harlock's shadowy clockwork stronghold to recapture Pierre Cowles. And so we're going to do a sort of echo of the Rogue Trader campaign that we did, where the players are going to need some ridiculous warpy things, like they'll need a song and a singer, which is going to be where the Eldari Exodites come in. That will be the guide. It'll be like their version of a navigator to lead them through the warp. And then they'll need probably like a trinket of protection. And then they'll need something clockworky as like a key to the door. And so I don't know that this whole season is going to be like 20 episodes. This one, yeah, I mean, it's hard to plan this far out. We're talking Season 3 could conceivably be in an entire year from now or more. So I don't want to ascribe a specific episode count, but I would say closer to 10 than 20 for sure. And if the players have the protection of the 4 Chaos Gods, I think that in the process, whatever they do in Season 2.5, it'll start building corruption on their characters, but it will provide them with tangible benefits. Like, I don't want to say the service of a demon, but each of the Chaos Gods will offer something to help against Erasmus Harlock specifically, and then probably like a promise that when you go into the warp, like they will walk with you through the shadows or something like that. They'll send like a demon shepherd to prevent Erasmus's forces from wiping them out. So if they choose to go in totally pure, which is of course always the correct choice, if they don't have the blessings of the 4 Chaos Gods, or they only have some of the blessings, instead a demon of that specific branch will be part of Erasmus's forces. So if you don't get Khorne on your side, there's a bloodletter in the final battle, just to make the battle extra super, super hard. I think that the thing to note about Erasmus Harlock, I want to play him up as like this impossibly strong villain who's meddling in the timeline actually fucking changes the editions of Warhammer 40K and like decanonizes things. I wanted to imply that he understands that squats, the space dwarves or whatever they're called, the kin. God, what are they called now? Where's Spoon when I really need him? They were part of the Rogue Traders, so like 2nd edition, and they were decanonized until now, which is like 10th or 11th edition, I think. But he remembers when they existed. I tried to make a comment about that. I don't remember if I actually did it. But he understands that what he's doing to change the timeline has effects on it. And he wants to change the timeline in such a way that the Horus Heresy books start with the line, and Horus won. And so for him, if Horus wins, the Emperor dies, he gains full control of time. And in the process, he pauses all of human suffering and time so that they always power the warp forever. So all the Chaos Gods are I don't want to say happy, but they don't oppose what he's doing, but it also fuels him. And then he travels back to when he was a human still, a full human, and goes and hangs out with his wife and kid. I think it's a daughter, while they're still alive. However, this is Warhammer 40K. So even though he's a big bad villain and something like a demigod, like stronger than a Primarch, stronger than a Daemon Prince, not as powerful as a Chaos God. Different in a way. Very different. Mad, insane. He approaches things from a different angle. And he gets his power from the deep warp. But he's still human on the inside. He's a human that has taken possession of a demon's soul. So he is bound to a cursed fate where he can't ever succeed. He will never, because his doom is to always pursue his family, just like Kingpin in Spider-Man. He can't ever actually reach it. All right, so we have a comment here on Twitch Live. Do you have any rules of thumb for how many episodes an arc you expect to take? I don't. I'm shooting from the hip here. I don't know if the question is like how many episodes should an arc take? I don't think that's what you're asking. I think you're asking how do I predict that? It's just kind of how much content I think I can get together for it, just how much story I think I can pack into that amount of time. It should be noted though that I usually undercut my episode numbers on my predictions. I'm usually pretty conservative. So if I say 20 and it ends up being 25, I wouldn't be surprised. I like to say fewer number and then be wrong in it and it be higher. You typically don't want to make a plan for a number of episodes. Now, this is just life experience as a streamer and a tabletop RPG player. You really don't want to ever make a plan for a full story arc that is longer than half a year because people's lives can change. And this is going to be a real side tangent. Sometimes people need to leave and they might need like a graceful out and they can give you like a month before their schedule changes. And sometimes people might have a big change and they need to leave immediately. Or, yeah, like immediately. And that usually sucks. Hasn't happened to me that much, but it usually sucks when something like that happens. So you kind of want to plan around that. Not Battlestar Galactica. Babylon 5 style. So Babylon 5, if you haven't seen it, you absolutely should watch it. Although season 1 is rough. It's just like season 1 of The Wire. You have to get through it in order for the other better seasons to make sense. It's a rough season 1. But season 2 through 5, amazing, excellent, some of the best storytelling. It's a sci-fi show that had decent animation during the time, still holds up now. And the ships had Newtonian physics. So if you were burning in a straight line, you would have to flip your ship around and burn in the other direction to slow down enough to stop. It was a pretty big change from stuff like Star Trek or Star Wars. Just minor things. But let's talk about the overarching story. The guy who made Babylon 5 created all of the seasons all at once, laid the whole storyline out, and kind of like I'm doing now, like it isn't precisely exact. He had the broad strokes of it. But when he made all of the characters, he gave all of them a reason to leave. there is something in their past that might draw them away to go do something else, so that if someone had to leave the show, they could be pulled away. And you can see what those past things are in the characters who don't get pulled away. Like, you'll be like, oh, interesting. Like, this seems like something that could happen at any moment that could pull the captain away, or that could pull the executive officer away. It's always this doom hanging above them that could cause them to go back to Earth Core or go back to Earth itself or something like that. And it does happen to several characters. The guy who played the original commander in in Babylon 5 had a complete mental breakdown during season 1, and his character had to be written out. But fortunately, they had like I'm mentioning, they had already prepared that, and so they wrote him out and brought him back as a guest several times when he was better. And they had a replacement character written up, which they then brought a guy, I think his name is Bruce Boxleitner, in, that replaced him as the main character for season 2 through 5. And a couple other characters suffer this. I think whoever played Talia Winters was written out for several seasons and then showed back up again as a villain and then came back. Yeah, so if you're writing stories at this kind of level where you want to plan for something like 20 plus episodes, you absolutely are going to want to do a plan like that. And again, this is, if you're playing with your friends, it's totally different. If you're making content, if you're doing a show like this, you have to be prepared to have somebody who's going to leave, and so you need to have a story ready for when they go, is all I want to say about that. The Warp Puzzle, again, not the name, just the working title. I don't really have a lot of specifics on this one. I'm probably going to lean heavily on some of the imagery James gave us about clocks and spiders and betrayals, things from Erasmus Harlock's past, but they're going to need to gather the 3 items. Let's call it the song and the singer. The song and the singer. And this is going to be an Aeldari Exodite. So part of the season, the opening part of the season, will be them traveling to this secretive Aeldari Exodite world that possibly is hinted at in season 2. We'll see whether that actually executes correctly or not. So they could have a positive view, or they could have a very negative view of the Aeldari Exodites, but either way, they need to either kidnap the correct person, or negotiate for them, or just convince them to come along in order to solve it. So they need a song and the singer. They need something clockwork. Maybe we'll do the wedding thing, where it's like you need something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. That'll be like, there'll be some sort of clever rhyme or schemey thing related to clocks that they need to gather, and then there'll be the key. Did I do this wrong? Oh, I'm not in text mode, that's why. The key. Erasmus Harlock's past. And once they have these 3 items, they'll kick it off for, let's call it a 2 or 3 part episode. That'll be, they take the ship into the warp. Oh, and so in season 3, they'll be promoted to like the Inquisitor's warband, and they'll be hanging out with the bridge crew, and the bridge crew that we've implied throughout season 1 and 2 will be there, heavily featuring, of course, probably the Navigator will be someone they talk to a lot. Mercutio Borghese will be there. The Rogue Trader himself will probably fight alongside them, and he'll use his rogue tradery power to prevent what was that bullshit power Pondo had where he prevented people from gaining corruption, and that will be how they make it through the warp, is not just the protection of the song and the singer, but also the rogue trader physically protecting them. Oh, we should go to Nurgle's garden. That will be part of season 2.5. Will be journeying to Nurgle's Garden, just for the memes, of course, just for the memes. Maybe we'll include something about Kegorek as well. That was always my plan, was to negotiate with Kegorek, the Harlequin god, through just making plans within plans that were all lies. My real plan was to get that guy's attention and get him to help us. It wasn't a very good plan. It didn't work out like that. But the finale will basically just be a big set piece battle of like breaking through these doors. Pondo will play not Erasmus Harlock. Pierre Cals. He'll play Pierre Cals again. And I don't know, they'll break Pierre Cals out of time prison and give him a pistol, and then they'll all go together and go murder Erasmus Harlock once and for all. And because Erasmus Harlock has to suffer forever, they'll like defeat him and they'll seal him, and then they'll watch as like his doomed fate begins again. Like he goes all the way back to the first edition, first timeline, and will have to suffer for all eternity as the storyline loops and repeats itself. And at this point, for Erasmus Harlock, this is the last point in his life. And for everybody else, their timeline keeps going. And that is all of Imperium Maledictum. We're only about an hour in. I don't know that I have that much more specific overarching campaign prep to do, but I do want to talk about player goals. So, season 2, I think James is really going to push to be made a member of the crew officially. And I because he's made that his long-term goal, I want to make sure it happens at some point during season 2, so he doesn't just have it as a goal all the way till the end of the game through season 3. So I think at some point during season 2, there will be something like I'll probably start it during the Darkholds, during season 1.5, where like a high-ranking ecclesiarchy person offers some sort of special mission or bargain that's like, I don't think your quest to get this guy married is ever going to work out. I think that the dude who went into the warp is dead, and you need to repent and do this mystical holy quest for us. Maybe it's something really fucked up, like get either a specific Magos or get a certain number of like engine seers or tech priests to convert. Something to keep James really sneaky and involved, and also get him to open up his book of negotiation tactics. But probably it's going to be like convert a certain number of Adeptus Mechanicus to at least get them to praise the God Emperor rather than the Omnissiah. And if James's sister Holly can do that, they will have done enough penance that their failure in this mission releases them from their service, and they can feel comfortable transiting to the service of the Rogue Trader. So I fully feel like James is capable of pulling that mission off. And so that's probably going to be his big story arc during, let's call it the first half of season 2, is going to be some achievable, but not immediately, because I don't want him to just spam down to Titan's Lair. It needs to be clear that the whole group still has to complete their overarching mission of learning what each of the individual 5+ factions needs, so that all their needs can be bought, sold, and met. I think that during the Darkholds, we'll have a brief scene with Kain interacting with the Flame Wardens, who are going to make up the core of his new Elysian 143rd, although we're calling them the DDR or something. I don't remember exactly what it is, but getting that done is going to be important. And we need to figure out some way to string him along during season 2, where it's like, okay, you're down on the planet, you've done the negotiations, but also you're the only one who's like in a leadership capacity. You're the literal only commissioned officer of this regiment. So you have to go back every once in a while and like provide them with leadership and set training schedules and do bureaucracy. And I assume this will be a great way of getting Kain and Omar to continue to pull off hijinks together, which is always a good call. And it might even involve Sister Holly tag teaming in to give assistances. It's always good to see cast members working together. So trying to find a way to encourage them to work together through their goals is a good plan. So I think that season 2 is going to be Kain. A half to 3/4 is going to be training this regiment up. And then the last part, once that long-term goal is done, I can't totally predict what his next goal is going to be, but I think that a storyline I have for him is like giving the regiment up, right? As his character grows in power, the resources he has access to make it so that he doesn't have the training to be like a colonel. It's just not in him. He literally has been trained since birth to be a weapon for the Inquisition. And I think that the last quarter of season 2 is going to be fully realizing that he is an inquisitorial weapon, not a commander of men. And like the person who trains a regiment is not the person who leads the regiment. And so it'll be him giving the regiment up to a competent officer, maybe even picking who he believes the competent officer is. We've already seen that during season 1, that was a storyline he had. And giving up that power, giving up the regiment, and moving on with his life for what he was really born and then bred and trained to do, which is the inquisitorial duties. And I'm hoping that if I drive him into that storyline, it'll help him make a long-term goal that's very season 3, go into the warp and finish the fight, Mass Effect 2 suicide mission style. Omar, I think that he needs to, I don't know if it's in character or out of character, he really needs to come to grips about this he's a slave thing. Like, he literally had his contract sold. Warhammer 40K absolutely has a huge, I mean, what do you think a servitor is? I think that there needs to come to be the recognition that his life is even less under his control. I want to juxtapose the sort of freedom he has as a rogue trader crewman to like go places, do things, own property, buy stuff, and even get promoted. But like, this is it. This is his life. There is no leaving it. He can't go anywhere. He can't leave the service. So I don't know what his new long-term goal is. I don't think he said it. And I'm going to have to take that into account. But I definitely want his story in season 2 to be like a story of accepting that this is where he's at now and his life is never going to be anything but this. And maybe it'll even be sort of ironic insofar as he always wanted this to happen. You know, he always wanted to leave sort of bureaucratic nightmare he was a part of, and now that he's made it, maybe imply that he was better off when he didn't know about chaos stuff or had to travel to the warp and all of those things. Very nostalgic, wistful for the old times. Doesn't understand what he has now, sort of deal. I think I could probably talk him into that if his character isn't walking towards it. I don't know if that's a worthy cause. We'll see what his long-term goal ends up being, because when a player, 500 XP is a lot of XP in this system. So when a player gives you a long-term goal, they're telling you, I want to complete this and get a fuck ton of XP. So it must be important to them. So don't dick them over on this. Oh, I think I muted myself. I don't know how long ago I muted, so I don't know how much you missed. Pondo sent me a bunch of Mimi things, pinged me on Discord. So if you have questions live right now, now's the time to ask them. We're probably going to wrap up here. I mean, I always have time for questions if you've got them. I hope that this campaign prep has been helpful in getting you to plan things out. I'm probably privately going to do session planning for the Darkholds, which is mostly going to be making the map and the factions. And I'm not going to do it tonight, so I might record that privately and then also post that if people are interested. I guess they are. I mean, it was so highly, people really wanted that a lot. And I don't like doing this, guys, but you really wanted me to do it based on the survey. I don't like doing it because it's so spoilersy, and in the past, people have messaged cast members and basically spoiled the storyline. And I just need you guys to be fucking cool about it. And don't be a narc. Don't be a snitch. Don't be shitty about this. You guys are adults. I think you can handle it. But it just takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch. To circle back around, any final questions about this session before we wrap up here? I'm so negative about this. I feel like this must be such a put off for people, how negative I am about this. But people said they wanted this quite badly, and I really am doing it against my better judgment. So I'm grinding against my own better judgment. And I'm afraid that negativity has poured out. But you guys want this. I'm trying to make it happen. And I apologize if that negativity is flowing out. How in-depth do I get in my pre-planning phase? I feel like this is pretty in-depth. I mean, one thing I didn't mention is that, like, things like Gropsis and him being part of the Darkholds, that was initially planned. For Titan's Lair, I laid out the Titan's Lair through a meme joke in Omar's prequel. There was somebody calling a night house, and that's going to be one of the houses where they were like, we haven't heard from your warranty in about 20 years, sort of deal. And that house and that particular Imperial Knight is going to be the one that, like, the Dark Mechanicus has replaced their sacristans, that sort of deal. So, I feel like how my pre-planning, you have to have an idea of where you're going overall. You also have to be willing to abandon it, just to be clear about that as well. You have to be willing to abandon plans that you've made or alter them. Altering plans, fine. Abandoning plans, also fine. Based on how events go down and, like, people's long-term goals, this is why I like goal-based planning, even though there was a huge discussion on Blades of Honor about the negative aspects of goal-based planning. If you have goal-based planning, that means the players are telling you what's important to them, which makes it very easy to steer the story towards that. And then the players are like, wow, I'm being listened to, and this is something I really wanted to invest my time in. and the story was really important to me. And for the audience, it makes you seem like you're some sort of creative genius when someone's like, wow, that story was really fun. It was exactly what I wanted. And you're like, little do you know that you told me what you wanted. And the audience is like, what a genius. How could he have known that? And I'm like, they told me. All right. Do I go through and plan each episode, or do you just tend to hit major story beats? I do plan episodes. I tend to plan the arcs within the seasons better. And then as the arc is starting to become relevant, that's when you start planning the individual episodes. Like for campaign prep, at this level, at where I'm at, I absolutely do not want to plan. I don't want to plan any episodes in season 3 or in season 2.5, and probably not anything in the first half of season 2. I mean, I know I want a final battle here, and I know I want the 4 parts here to each be one Chaos God, and I know I want the final battle here. But those things are so far out. What I need to be concentrating on, but your mind needs to be focused on, are these 4 episodes, the Darkholds. The next arc here, that's important. That's good. I should be thinking about that. Shower thoughts while I'm driving, thinking about things generally. It's a good idea to think about the first 10 episodes, the first 2 arcs, let's say. Definitely the negotiation part. I need to, because that's going to involve a lot of footwork in creating charts so that I can engage Grimdark James's negotiation brain. I'm probably going to borrow from the mechanics of both the Rogue Trader RPG and from Stars Without Numbers. What was it called? Sons of Gold? Skies of Gold? I think it's called Sons of Gold. Is the merchant source book? Excuse me, I gotta go cough. Here we go, some delicious water. We're going to use the mechanics from that to help drive a sort of idea of trade going on in the background. We'll set up a situation where people will have stuff that isn't particularly relevant to another group. We'll have stuff that is definitely relevant to other groups, and we'll have stuff that could be relative to one or more groups, just so that the players get an idea of what everybody wants and maybe what they're holding back. Like, we'll have some products that people don't outrightly say that they have. Maybe we'll imply that they have it, or good investigation checks or good bureaucracy checks will uncover it. And then once that network of trade is down, we'll watch James and maybe Omar work up some sort of scheme to trade between different factions and try to get the best deals. James will say stuff about Red Ocean, Blue Ocean. He'll do something that I literally can't predict because he's literally a master negotiator, and I've just read the Donald Trump book, The Art of the Deal. I mean, I can't plan for James at any point during this. Grimdark James is smarter than me, and he thinks faster than me. So attempting to anticipate him is extremely difficult. And it's not just about being smarter than someone or them thinking faster than you. I think I can, to some extent, predict Omar. Maybe Kain, not very well. No, I mean, when it comes to predicting people, I can predict Henley better than anybody, but I've also known him much longer than anybody else. It's also about the fact that James knows me. James has watched a lot of my content. He's definitely analyzed a lot of my content and my storytelling style. So attempting to predict him is a foolhardy means. And you're probably going to have players like that. So here's my suggestion for you, Game Masters. Don't try. Don't try to exactly predict somebody's actions. You need to be way more general. Rather than do man-to-man, you want to do zone defense. Don't concentrate on specifically predicting people. It can be a very attractive thing as a game master to like try to individually predict someone's actions or lead them down a path. Let them make their own choices to some extent. And play zone defense. You want to lay out possibilities, and you need to be ready to throw those possibilities away when the players don't leap at them. You will have storylines that you aren't going to deploy. You will have fights that your players don't go for. Just be ready to reuse them later or just cut them away. No matter how well you think you can plan for your players, sometimes they just pull out a bunch of fucking crack grenades and throw them down a hall rather than do the chase scene, which I need to insert somewhere. The new chase scene is probably going to go here at the end of Titan's Lair. It'll probably be some sort of spooky, super powerful, half man, half machine mutant construct that chases them through the Titan. So like it's too small for the Titan to fight, and it's the players just being chased through the Titan until they finally either evade it or maybe kill it through, I don't know, like they force it to go they bait it out onto an exterior area of the Titan, and then the Titan somehow gets shot, and like the huge Titan-sized bolt or whatever that's called hits the thing and kills it instantly, and you're like, oof, wow, that was problem solved there. And then their real boss fight versus the Dark Mechanicus Skitarii Ranger and his cyber dogs will start there. He'll be like, no, my creation was destroyed. I'll have to deal with you personally. We'll do some really cringy anime shit. Just to really fuck with the audience there. But yeah, so, you know, I have some scenes specifically thought out, but whole episodes, no. You don't want to plan whole episodes except for the immediate arc that you're about to do. You want to have the major arcs overall planned out. You want to have the containers ready to go, and then do the specifics as it's coming up. Don't get too invested in future planning. Things may change. What if I laid in a whole bunch of work and I planned out the whole season, all of the seasons, and then Omar got sick and we had to like replace him on the show? All of that work I just did, completely gone. All of the foreshadowing and all that stuff, totally useless. Don't waste your time. You can't predict people a whole year plus, 20 plus episodes into the future. Don't try. Plan arcs, play zone defense. Be ready to abandon things that don't work for you. Any final questions here? Any final questions? Spoon, I hope that answered your question as well. I said it in a sports metaphor by saying zone defense. So hopefully that helps all these fucking fantasy football people that have infested my channel. I don't understand how your game works, fantasy football people, but I'll try to use your language so that I seem like I'm one of you. But I'm not. It's a lie. 'Tis a lie! I don't see anybody else saying anything in chat. YouTube, if you have questions, I will answer you in the comments. Let me know. Thank you for joining me. Maybe you'll get the Darkholds prep soon. If people start spoiling the cast about this or spamming this shit in Warhammer 40K chat on Discord, we're done. We're not going to do it again. And I will ban and punish whoever does spoil it for the cast or just the general audience. There will be consequences. I'm not messing around. I'm not here for your entertainment. I am here for your entertainment. I can't say that song. I can't sing that song correctly. But you really don't want to mess with me tonight.